Christ died for the sins of the world. Anyone and everyone can believe. Whosoever believes in him will be saved. If you refuse him, if you refuse to believe in him, you're gonna suffer the consequences of the sins that Christ died for. And you could have had atonement. That's what's so devastating about hell. You don't have to go there. It's not destined for you. It's not fated for you. You actually have a choice in the matter. You can follow Christ. You can be saved. That's the good news. We're going to be engaging with a very well-known, very well-respected Reformed / Calvinistic scholar named Herman Bavinck. He wrote Reformed Dogmatics, which is very popular among Calvinists. The other reason I want to engage specifically with Herman Bavinck is because he is often seen by Calvinists as very reasonable, very middle, kind of a middle ground kind of a Calvinist, meaning he doesn't sound at all hyper. He sounds very reasonable in his approach to theology. And sometimes I'm accused of only engaging with the high Calvinist, the deterministic kind of Calvinist, even though Calvin himself was a determinist, theistic determinist by his own admission, as are leading Calvinists like John Piper, arguably the most influential Calvinistic pastor and theologian today, admits to being a theistic determinist. That's what compatibilism is, by the way, for those who are not aware of this. I spend a lot of time educating Calvinists on what Calvinism is. Compatibilism, which is the philosophical underpinning of the Calvinistic system, is saying that determinism, theistic determinism, is compatible with human responsibility. And that's what compatibilism is. So they are affirming theistic determinism is true and compatible with the fact that we are still held morally responsible for the choices that God determines. Now, we think that we're indeterminist in the sense that we do not believe determinism is true. We do not believe that God determines our thoughts, actions, and deeds, okay? And therefore, we don't have the quandary of how is it compatible because we don't believe that determinism is true. You don't have to have anything to be compatible with determinism if you reject the concept of determinism. We reject the concept of determinist. We're indeterminist. We believe in free will. We believe that God decreed not which choice that we'll make, but that we would be free to make choices. Okay, that's what we are as indeterminists. We are free will advocates, you could say. It's really not about defending free will as far as I'm concerned. It's really about defending the holiness and the goodness and the character of God. That's what the major priority is, at least in my mind. It's not necessarily about bowing at the altar of free will like the Calvinist will oftentimes accuse us of. It's about defending his character, his goodness, his holiness. When he says something, he means it. He doesn't have two seemingly contradictory wills. One says, I desire for you to come, and the other one preventing you from coming. These kinds of things we think are philosophical baggage added to the text by a philosophical systematic versus true biblical exegesis and understanding the text rightly. Now, that's where the debate has been, okay? Now, why Herman Bavinck? Herman Bavinck isn't known to be a high Calvinist. He's reasonable in his responses and the way he handles things. He's very pro-evangelism. He's very pro get the gospel out to all people, kind of a Calvinist. He's the kind of Calvinist that a lot of mainstream, moderate type Calvinists point to as someone who really represents their views well. The message of the gospel is not to all people individually. Christ has died in your place. All your sins have been atoned for and forgiven. In other words, what he's trying to do is give the caveat, just because you make the proclamation of the gospel to everyone, the message is not really for each individual, which is where we would get off the boat. Say, no, I think the message preached to all people is actually for all people. Go figure. Silly us. Sorry. That's just so, I get frustrated sometimes when I read through these things because I used to be there and I used to see the world this way, and you have to do whatever you can to make the system fit. And so I can preach this to everybody, but indescribably, it's not really for everybody, but I got to preach it to everybody because he tells us to, but it doesn't make, it's just drop determinism, people. It's really simple, not hard. Okay. All right. For even though universalists, again, that's us in his mind, universalists imagine they can say this to every human without any further qualification. And I agree. I'd have no qualm whatever saying Christ died in your place. Your sins have been atoned for and forgiven. Well, again, he seems to be phrasing the argument in a different way. I wouldn't say past tense, your sins have been forgiven, because in order for your sins to be forgiven, you must confess your sins. So he sets up the argument kind of in the false dichotomy here. We would not say Christ has already forgiven sins that haven't been confessed. We would say he forgives if you confess your sins. He is faithful and just and will forgive you of your sins. So what happens first? You believe and confess your sins so as to be forgiven your sins, right? The fact that the provision of atonement has been paid for your sins is a separate issue, just like the serpent lifted up on the pole, even before you get bitten by the snake, before the venom is coursing through your body, before you're born and reach the age of accountability. The provision's already been made for you. It's there. It's ready. It's there. Okay. It's separate from you looking to that provision in faith. And you can't conflate those two things. Again, I don't know if that's what he had in mind or not. He's not alive for me to ask him, but it's what he seems to be pushing up here. And so he's saying, for even the universalists, imagine they can say this to every human without any further qualification. And I disagree. I would not say it that way, because I would not say somebody's sins are forgiven before they confess their sins. Okay. I would say the provision of their forgiveness has already been made. Okay. Christ has died in your place. I would say that. And so I would reword it a little bit, but hopefully we're following his point. After all, according to them, again, to us, to non-Calvinists, after all, according to them, Christ has secured only the Christ has secured, look at this, Christ has secured only the possibility of forgiveness and salvation. Okay? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with God securing the possibility of your forgiveness if you ask for forgiveness, the possibility of your salvation if you believe? What's unbiblical about that? Okay? This is like the false dilemma that you'll hear from White and others, that either God actually saves or he only makes people savable. False dilemma. He makes it sound, oh man, I like the actual save position versus only making people savable position. So I'm going to go with option number one, whenever there's another option that's better than both of those options. And what's the other option? Both are true. It's not a false dilemma, either or, it's both and. God makes salvation possible for all people, and he actually saves whoever believes. Actual salvation and he makes all people savable are both true. In other words, does he actually heal everybody from the snake poison? Or does he only make all people healable by the serpent? No, he makes all people healable, and he actually heals anyone who looks to the serpent. It's not a difficult thing, guys. I'm not trying to be patronizing, but this is when you remove determinism and you strip away all of the Calvinistic baggage off of this stuff, it is just so simple. So a child can understand provisionism. It is so basic and simple. Christ died for the sins of the world. Anyone and everyone can believe. Whosoever believes in him will be saved. If you refuse him, if you refuse to believe in him, you're gonna suffer the consequences of the sins that Christ died for. And you could have had atonement. That's what's so devastating about hell. You don't have to go there. It's not destined for you. It's not fated for you. You actually have a choice in the matter. You can follow Christ. You can be saved. That's the good news. That's the good news. You can be saved. Made in America, thank you for your super chat and your kind words. These live streams are great to listen to while on the road. God bless you, Dr. Flowers. Appreciate that. Thank you for your super chat as well. Thanks, all of you who give and support the ministry. I really greatly appreciate it.